Hello there viewers, and thanks for tuning in for part 3 of my ongoing retrospective on Batman cinematic history. If you've already seen part 1 and part 2, welcome back. If you're just joining now, welcome aboard. Here are my other 2 Batman videos I made, so check them out if you're curious. In the meantime, welcome to part 3, where the next 3 Batman movies will be consisting of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. So this part will be focused on one iteration of Batman's cinematic history. If you've seen the other 2 parts, then you know that I'll be finishing this part with analysing Christian Bale's version of Batman. Also, my history as a Batman fan begins with this trilogy. I played the LEGO Batman games when I was around 7 or 8, I think. Then I found my dad's DVD of Batman Begins lying around. I watched it and fell in love with it. And then I got the rest of the Dark Knight trilogy on DVD as a birthday gift. And from that point on, I was an avid Bat fanboy. And this would lead to me getting hooked on the superhero genre in general. And despite that I may have gotten into other franchises along the course of the next 13 years of my existence, Batman has always stuck with me, and it's all thanks to Christopher Nolan's trilogy. If it weren't for this trilogy, I probably never would have gotten into the superhero genre. And while I'm not as obsessed with superheroes nowadays, I'll still watch a superhero movie if it looks interesting. I can definitely say that I'm looking forward to seeing James Gunn's version of Superman. But as I've grown older and consumed other Batman media, I've begun to see more flaws with the Dark Knight trilogy upon several rewatches. Is it just a thing with having a more critical eye as you get older? Or did the Dark Knight trilogy mishandle aspects of Batman's character and world? And if so, does this trilogy still hold up well? Let's take a look, starting of course, at the beginning. After Batman and Robin blew audiences over with its take on The Dark Knight, it would go on to have a huge impact on the franchise for the next decade. And by that, I mean the audiences were blown out of the theater by how outrageously terrible the movie was. And this caused the Batman movie franchise to be brought to a screeching halt for the next 8 years. Joel Schumacher wanted to direct one more Batman movie that would bring his and Tim Burton's movies full circle. This hypothetical future Batman film is known by many names: Batman Unchained, Batman Triumphant, or Batman Unhinged. We cannot be sure on what it would have been called in the end, but Joel Schumacher was throwing ideas around for it during the production of Batman and Robin, and he hired writer Mark Prosovich to help him write the script for the film. One idea Mark introduced in the script is that Batman would have to face all of the villains that he killed in the past through illusions from Scarecrow's fear toxin. And the Scarecrow would have been played by Nicolas Cage. And apparently, Joel Schumacher scoffed at the logistics of bringing this scene to the big screen, claiming that Prosovich just wrote the most expensive scene of his career. But you know what? I actually dig that idea. The idea of Batman finally facing the consequences for senseless killing throughout the franchise does sound like an interesting turn to take the story in. And Nicolas frickin' Cage as the Scarecrow would have been awesome to see. But there would have been one problem with this idea. You know, besides the budget. George Clooney probably would have returned as Batman in this hypothetical film. And regardless if he decided to give a shit and give a good performance or not, there is still a problem. His Batman has never faced any of these villains before. This is a franchise where Batman has been recasted twice, so the impact of him facing total strangers would have been a mess. So perhaps it was for the best that this film never saw the light of day. Though it is a shame, since Joel Schumacher was capable of telling serious stories, as we saw hints of in Batman Forever. And he really wanted to make up for the failure of Batman and Robin. And he would spend the rest of his life apologizing for the train wreck of a film that he was tasked with directing, with the studio interference forcing him to make his movie into a 2-hour-long toy commercial. Rest in peace, Joel. You did the best you could. So the next director to take control of Batman would be Christopher Nolan, who caught wind of Warner Bros. Wanting to reboot the Batman franchise while he was working on Insomnia. I may not have seen much of Christopher Nolan's catalog, besides his 3 Batman movies, Oppenheimer, and Inception, which I watched recently, But even from those movies that I have seen, I can tell that the dude has talent. He's been making movies since he was 7 and he just kept at it his whole life. Like, holy crap. Oppenheimer may not exactly be up my alley, but I can easily say that it's probably the best of his work yet. And history enthusiasts will certainly get a kick out of it. And the fact that they pulled off the atomic bomb explosion without CGI, that is just cinema. I also admire Nolan's dedication to getting as much on camera as possible, and only using CGI as an enhancement. It's really impressive and admirable when directors of live-action movies aim to use as many practical sets and props as possible, instead of just completely relying on visual effects and green screen. And Nolan wanted to keep his Batman movies as grounded in the real world as possible. And while I would say that this has had a negative impact on future Batman movies, this is something that had never been done before, and after the nonsense of Batman and Robin, it was a change that was needed at the time. Alright, with the history out of the way, how is Batman Begins? Well, cutting to the chase, I can confidently say it's still a really good movie. Not only was this a good return to form for the Batman franchise, but a really good superhero origin movie, really living up to its title. The movie's first act flashes back and forth between Bruce Wayne's younger years and his training with former Jedi Master turned assassin Qui-Gon Jinn. We see him getting thrashed by bats as a kid, and his parents dying again. This time at the hands of Joe Chill, so more true to the traditional Batman backstory. Bruce as an adult, played by Christian Bale, actually wants to exact revenge on Joe Chill by killing him, which his childhood friend Rachel Dawes, played by Katie Holmes, scolds him for. And this leads to Bruce throwing his gun into the river and establishing Batman's no-kill rule in the first act. This movie gets right to the point on why Batman refuses to take a life. Great! I hope he doesn't break this no-kill rule. Oh, who am I fucking kidding? He does. Bruce heads to confront Gotham's biggest crime boss, Carmine Falcone, after he orchestrated Joe Chill's death for testifying against him. And Falcone reminds Bruce that he has no understanding of the criminal underworld, and that there is nothing he can do about it. One thing Batman Begins does very well, which the sequels missed the mark on, is that Gotham City in the first movie is an actual shithole. Sure, in some areas Gotham looks like Chicago, but they still make it a point to show that in other areas, Gotham is a dirty dump of a city to live in, and that the system is full of corrupt judges and cops. So Bruce decides on a whim to travel the world and get an understanding of the criminal mind, leading to him getting arrested and locked up in a prison in Bhutan. And this is technically the second time period we are shown in the movie before we cut back to Bruce's childhood, and this scene immediately shows us right off the bat how aggressive the young Bruce Wayne is, and how he's able to hold his own in a fight against 6 men, even before his training with the League of Shadows. Speaking of which...
Makes you think I need a bath.
You are covered in shit, Mr. Wayne. And you reek of diarrhea.
Start getting a reservation at Dorkin now, you fucking stupid bastard!
Upon completing his training, their leader, Ra's al Ghul, or as this film likes to say, Ra's al Ghul, for some reason, instructs Bruce to kill a criminal, but Bruce, being the morally compassionate man he is, decides to spare the man's life and burn the fucking dojo down to the ground, with the ninjas running for their lives like cowards. Even if we can assume that they survived, Bruce still clearly killed their leader. You can call it an indirect kill, but Bruce still caused the fire, so indirect or not, it's still on him. I mean, they did want Bruce to destroy his home as they claimed Gotham is beyond saving, so Bruce retaliated by destroying their home instead. Upon returning to Gotham City, Bruce revisits the cave where he was attacked by bats as a child, and as the bats swarm around him, he calmly stands up, overcoming his fear and embracing his destiny. Bruce gathers some unused equipment from his company Wayne Enterprises, with the help of Lucius Fox, played by the brilliant Morgan Freeman.
Now that's more like it, Mr. Wayne.
And this movie shows us much of the process behind how Batman's suit and equipment are made, including how he slips a radio receiver into the earpiece of his cowl, and how he had to order 10,000 cowls to avoid suspicion. I mean, that's one way of doing it, I guess. And the gauntlets are reused from his ninja uniform. Upon his first night as Batman, he hadn't got the cowl yet, so he wore a ski mask. He questioned Sergeant James Gordon on how to prosecute Falcone before making his escape and almost getting himself injured or even killed in the process. This leads to him requesting Lucius for a parachute of sorts, and he supplies him with a memory cloth that transforms into a glider when a current is put through it. And once Bruce gets his suit and equipment all put together, he's ready to strike fear into the hearts of criminals. And he begins with putting a stop to Falcone's drug operation, and leaving him to be caught red-handed at the scene. And this is the beginning of Batman and Gordon's unofficial partnership. Batman and Gordon's friendship is done pretty well throughout the trilogy. Jim Gordon, played by Gary Oldman, is the first person to comfort Bruce after the death of his parents, earning Bruce's trust as Gordon is the only honest cop in a department filled with corrupt police and law enforcement. Alfred, played by Michael Caine, is also an ally in Bruce's crime-fighting career as he helps him set up the Batcave and his equipment. Batman eventually tracks down Falcone's associate, Jonathan Crane, aka the Scarecrow, played by Cillian Murphy, who initially auditioned for Batman, but his Bruce Wayne came off with a crazy vibe. Like a sadistic dude who you can just tell is hiding something. And Cillian Murphy even admitted himself that he did not feel right in the role at all. And he knew that Christian Bale was gonna get it. Though his Batman did come off as scary, so Nolan decided that he was a good fit for the Scarecrow. So it's pretty cool that Cillian actually did manage to land a role in the movie in the end. Because again, he's got the scary sadistic persona down, which works really well for the Scarecrow. Batman gets the location of Scarecrow's hideout by interrogating Flass, a corrupt cop who is such a dick in every scene he's in. So it's pretty satisfying to see Batman give him what's coming to him. Crane and his goons decide to torch all the evidence before Batman starts taking down the henchmen. Scarecrow manages to get the jump on Batman, causing the latter to hallucinate.
Roomba!
You jump off of buildings and you fight criminals and you're scared of Roombas?
How does it know where to go if we don't push it?
Wow. Wow.
Yes, this is totally canon. Bruce gets an antidote thanks to Morgan Freeman, which helps him best the Scarecrow in their second encounter, and give him a taste of his own medicine.
What have you been doing here?
Batman learns that Crane has poisoned the city water supply with his fear toxin, and that he was a pawn to a bigger threat. Batman then has to escape Arkham Asylum with Rachel, who has been poisoned by Scarecrow, leading to an intense chase between him and the GCPD. And this chase sequence shows the mass destruction that this Batmobile is capable of. Initially, Christopher Nolan did not want to include the Batmobile, but was convinced in the end since you can't have Batman without the Batmobile. But there was one condition: the Batmobile would also get this realistic and grounded treatment. So rather than resembling the traditional Batmobile design, it instead resembles a military vehicle, which it was, named the Tumbler, as it was yet another piece of unused equipment that was just lying around in Wayne Enterprises. Boy, would that come back to bite them in the ass in the third movie. Alfred reprimands his son for driving recklessly, and Bruce tells him to take Rachel home before attending his birthday party, where he's greeted by Qui-Gon Jinn! And then Bruce deduces that he is not really Qui-Gon Jinn from Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, released in 1999, directed by George Lucas, and that he is really Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul as Nolan likes to call him. Ra's allows Bruce to let his guests leave, which he does by acting like a drunk asshole. I love seeing this side of Bruce and the lengths he's willing to go to make people think that there is no way that this drunken jerk is Batman. Ra's then tells Bruce that stopping Crane has forced the League of Shadows to move ahead with their plan to destroy Gotham. And they start with Wayne Manor by burning it to the ground, leaving Bruce for dead. Luckily, Alfred arrives just in time to save his master and they escape to the Batcave. Batman then suits up and heads to the city to stop Ra's plan. And what is his plan exactly? To use a microwave that they stole from Wayne Enterprises to vaporize the city's water supply that is contaminated with Scarecrow's fear toxin, and let Gotham City tear itself apart. Ra's always seems to have the most complex plans to destroy Gotham, from funding Arkham City to turning the planet into Waterworld. and I thought this was supposed to be the realistic Batman movie. Batman, with the help of Jim, puts a stop to Ra's plan. I will also say that this movie's fight scenes are the best the trilogy has to offer. Not that they're amazing, and there is a lot of jump cutting which is kind of distracting. I feel it is fitting for Batman's first fight scene where he's obscure and no one, not even the camera, can keep up with him, but it's kind of distracting when all the fight scenes are shot like this. Overall, not the best fight scenes I've ever seen, but they're not too bad in this movie. I think you can take a guess where this is going for the sequels. And Batman leaves his former mentor to die with his plans. Jim may have had a hand in it, but I'm sorry, Bruce. Leaving your mentor to die on your dad's train that your friend derailed with your personal war machine still counts as a kill. Shortly after, Rachel tells Bruce that they can be together when Gotham no longer needs Batman, and that his father would be proud of the man he became. And Bruce thanks her for being harsh on him that day, and making him realize that he was nothing more than a coward with a gun. Batman then meets up with Jim on the GCPD rooftop with the newly constructed Bat Signal. Jim has now been promoted to lieutenant, and he talks to Batman about the impact his actions have had and how to handle the new wave of crime, including a new criminal in town who has a taste of theatrics like Batman. He hands a piece of evidence from this new foe, and Batman turns it over to see a Joker card, certifying the movie's next villain. Jim then tells Batman that he never thanked him, and Batman replies that he will never have to, ending off the movie with Batman and Gordon's newly formed and strong partnership. Once again, I'm glad to say that Batman Begins still holds up very well, not just as a Batman movie, but as a good superhero origin movie as well. Batman may have screwed up a few times with keeping up with his no-killing rule, but the no-kill rule is at least acknowledged and established. And the fight scenes, again, they're not the worst, but I've seen better. And there are still some good action scenes like Bruce's training montage and the Tumblr scenes. Batman Begins, along with the rest of the trilogy, is scored by Hans Zimmer. I would say my favorite work of his would be the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. But cutting to the chase, his work for the Dark Knight trilogy is really good and memorable in my opinion. Hans Zimmer really has a talent for making music that is epic, uplifting, and memorable. And his Batman theme has earned its place among the many great Batman themes, including the ones by Danny Elfman and Shirley Walker. Ra's and Scarecrow were a good combo of villains for this movie, and they were both well portrayed by their respective actors. We're both Irish, baby! The grounded and realistic setting, while it's not a direction I want Batman movies to go down in the future, this was the first time it was attempted, and I think they did it pretty well. The cast of the movie did a good job, and all around, this movie did Bruce's backstory very well, showing just how many steps it took for him to become the Batman. From his travels, to his training, to making his gear, and his motivation, which is what Batman 89 kind of ignored. And Jim Gordon's dynamic with Batman is done better than any Batman movie before it. As unlike the old movies, where he just sits on his ass most of the time, he plays a much more significantly active role in the movie, and contributes more to helping Batman defend their city that they just want to make a safer place to live in. And this movie is what got me hooked on the Batman franchise. Again, I guess it's just because it's such a well-told origin story that does a good job establishing Bruce's motivation and the journey he undertook to become the Dark Knight. This may not be a perfect movie overall, but it has a lot of good going for it, and I still thoroughly enjoy it to this day. Overall, I give Batman Begins the A rank. Now time for movie number 2. With Batman Begins being a successful return to form for the Caped Crusader, and the Joker set up to be the next villain, a sequel was inevitable. The Dark Knight would release in the summer of 2008, a few months after the unexpected hit of Iron Man beginning the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The 2000s truly was the beginning in the rise of superhero movies, and The Dark Knight was met with much bigger success than its predecessor. However, nowadays, while the majority still agree that The Dark Knight is a good film, there are some that have said it's overrated. I guess that this can go for the whole trilogy, but The Dark Knight was the most well received out of the three upon its release. so it's curious to see why many years after it's released, some would say it was overhyped. And where do I stand? Well, to be honest, my opinion on this movie, and the whole trilogy for that matter, has been flip-flopped a lot over the years. But now I feel I can do a much better job at thinking for myself, and not let what others have to say influence my opinions too much. So let's see what I think of this movie now. The movie opens with a bank robbery scene carried out by a group of thugs working for the Joker. All of them end up killing each other for a bigger cut, until only one of them remains, revealing as the Joker himself, played by the late Heath Ledger. There is a reason everyone praised this movie upon its release, and that is Heath Ledger's unforgettable take on the Clown Prince of Chaos. Heath Ledger stole every scene he was in, and he was just so damn funny, man. One of my favorite scenes being the pencil trick scene, where the Joker has the guts to crash a meeting held by the mob he stole money from, and ask for half of what they have left.
You think you could steal from us and just walk away?
Yeah.
Despite Nolan's grounded and serious version of Batman, the Joker never ceases to get a laugh out of me every time he's on screen. Obviously, he's not funny in the slapstick laugh out loud type of way, he's more funny in the dark sadistic kind of way. And it's all down to Heath's excellent line delivery and gestures. And it's such a shame that we lost him at a young age, as this movie probably would have made his career. Heath Ledger's performance in The Dark Knight was undeniably outstanding, and undoubtedly the highlight of the movie. Rest in peace, Heath Ledger. Also, going back to the Joker stealing every scene he was in, this also means he sort of steals the spotlight from Batman. I mean, Batman still does stuff, but the Joker scenes outshine his. But not to say that Batman has nothing to do in this movie. Bruce Wayne is still the playboy billionaire, who occasionally acts like a jerk to hide his true persona as Batman, in which he's still doing his thing, taking down criminals, Batman fakers, and the Scarecrow. Oh, and he yeets a dog. 10 out of 10 movie. After stopping this crime at the beginning of the movie, Bruce requests Lucius to make him a new suit so that he can move faster and turn his head. It's a funny little jab at the previous Batman movies. Though it is funny to imagine Batman trying to back the tumbler out of that little bunker while wearing the Batman Begins suit. Batman gets to test out his new Batsuit during his trip to Hong Kong. And let me just say that this is probably the best gliding scene we've seen in any Batman movie so far. The big jump, the lighting, and the fluttering of the cape in the wind makes for the best Batman glide scene that is probably the closest we've ever gotten to see Batman gliding through the night flawlessly like in the Arkham games. Batman kidnaps a mob boss named Lau, who is responsible for laundering the Gotham mob's money, and many of the mob members are put away thanks to the efforts of the new district attorney Harvey Dent, played by Aaron Eckhart, who is dating Rachel, now played by Maggie Gyllenhaal. So things seem to be going good for Gotham, until the Joker delivers a message to the city that Batman must take off his mask and turn himself in. Otherwise, he will keep killing people until he does. Harvey Dent eventually decides to use himself as bait to lure Joker out so that Batman can take him down. And this leads to a deadly chase between the GCPD and the Joker, who is riding in a carnival truck. Slaughter is the best medicine. Again, this Joker is so funny in the most fucked up ways. And his screen time during this chase scene always gets a laugh out of me.
Hey, you ain't like everybody else, pal.
And from this line, I could tell Heath Ledger was enjoying himself.
I like this job. I like it.
Batman defends Dent from an RPG fired by the Joker, though it causes heavy damage to the tumbler, forcing him to eject into Batpod mode, blowing up the tumbler in the process to erase any trace back to him or Lucius. And he takes a shortcut to catch up to Joker. Joker then plays a game of chicken with Batman, leading to the latter flipping the truck over. And in typical Nolan fashion, that was not CGI. The truck was flipped for real. Bravo, Nolan! Batman and Joker go for another round, with Batman losing hilariously. Joker then is arrested by Jim, who, oh, by the way, died earlier in the movie, but then didn't. So the Joker is captured, so all's well and ends well, right? Nope! As much of a psychopath as Joker is, he's still a criminal mastermind who is always planning 12 steps ahead. He arranged for Harvey and Rachel to be kidnapped and tied to explosives, leaving Batman and the GCPD with the decision to save one or the other. And Batman gets angrier and more violent as the Joker taunts him, especially when he brings up Rachel. Batman heads to save Rachel, only to find Harvey Dent covered in gasoline. And you can probably guess what this leads to. Rachel, unfortunately, was not so lucky, and all this was a distraction orchestrated by the Joker so that he could escape the lockup with Lau. And what does he do with the mob's money handler and all of the money they gave him? He burns it all, showing that he truly does not give a fuck about money and just wants to watch the world burn. Batman tracks down the Joker to a building undergoing construction, in which the Joker has disguised his hostages as clown goons. So Batman has to beat up a few SWAT teams to prevent them from killing the wrong people. Batman finally squares off against the Joker, and while Batman wins the fight, he doesn't win the war, as Joker has one final ace up his sleeve. Earlier when Harvey was in the hospital before Joker blew it up while dressed as a nurse, he takes advantage of Harvey's anger and manipulates him into going on a killing spree, so that Gotham would lose hope as the man who promised them a bright future went pretty far off the deep end, and his actions would result in the criminals he put away being released. Batman and Gordon head to settle things with Harvey, who is now a broken man and still distraught over the death of Rachel, and holds Gordon's family in the place where Rachel died as a way for punishing him for not saving her. Two-Face gets a shot at Batman, knocking him out. Lucius was not kidding about the trade-off of the new suit sacrificing armor plating for flexibility. However, that does not stop Batman as he shoves Two-Face off the building to save Jim's son. I mean, fair enough. The kid's life was in danger, and since appealing to what was left of Harvey's humanity didn't work, Batman had to act fast. And if I had a scarred penny for every time Batman made Two-Face die from falling, I would have two. I know it's not much, but it's weird that it happened twice. Batman ends up falling too, but the new Batsuit is still strong enough to prevent his fall from being fatal. However, the fall does cause a lasting injury to his leg. Though others may say it was because Two-Face shot Batman, but either way, this confrontation would leave lasting damage on Batman's leg. Batman decides to take the fall for Harvey's crimes to avoid the consequences for Gotham if they found out about their DA's true nature. And as Batman runs away from the GCPD, still with an injured leg mind you, Gordon ends the film with his iconic speech that Batman is the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs. A silent guardian, a watchful protector, the Dark Knight. Overall, I have to say, while not perfect, The Dark Knight is still a very well made movie. Again, it's mostly down to Heath Ledger stealing the show anytime he's on screen, and even Christian Bale admitted that he felt dull compared to Heath. In a good way, of course. The fight scenes still aren't great, but not terrible. The other action scenes, though, are pretty well done, especially Batman's glide through Hong Kong and the truck flip scene. Gotham in this movie looks a lot more real-world-like and less dirty, but that was Nolan's choice so that the Joker would have more tall buildings to wreck. It works, I suppose, but I prefer when Gotham looks more out of this world and a nightmarish place to live. The acting for the most part is really good once again, and this movie's themes centered around morality and how low people can fall are really interesting. Especially when the Joker, a person who gives zero shits, is the main villain. So to beg the question, was this movie overhyped and does it still deserve the praise it received back in 2008? I would say yes to both. Kinda. I don't think this movie was overhyped per se. Since Heath Ledger's Joker aside, the movie still has a lot of good going for it. But I wouldn't say it's flawless. The movie does have a lot of slower conversation scenes that can be boring for some. And going back to what Bale himself said, that a problem with Batman is that the villains are more interesting and that they didn't want to make Batman dull by comparison. And while I wouldn't say Batman was completely dull in The Dark Knight, he still didn't really feel like he had much to do in the movie besides stop the Joker, who again steals the show for most of the movie's runtime. I mean, he's even on the front cover of my Blu-ray copy of the movie. Batman Begins feels like a better Batman movie, while The Dark Knight feels like a better movie. But with all that being said, I can still say that The Dark Knight is still a great movie. It's not a masterpiece, and I may not adore it as much as I used to, but I can still say it's a good watch, and I will give it the B tier. Well, The Dark Knight Rises. Out of all three movies, this one definitely had it the worst when it came to reviews, and that includes when it initially came out in 2012, and especially in retrospectives. And I certainly have some issues with this movie myself, but there are plenty of things about The Dark Knight Rises that I do like. First off, the opening, where we are introduced to our main villain, Bane, played by Tom Hardy. Bane is honestly one of my favorite Batman villains, and since this is the grounded and realistic Batman and not your grandpa's goofy Adam Wee Batman, Bane does not have any of the venom that enhances his strength. But that's okay, because even in the comics, without the venom, Bane is still a very formidable fighter and an intelligent tactician, which is carried over perfectly to The Dark Knight Rises. The opening effectively shows how much of a threat Bane is and how good he is at planning and execution. So right off the bat, Bane in this movie is a huge improvement over the last time we saw him on the big screen. When it comes to his voice, I don't really mind it. I think it's fine. Even if his voice is a little silly, Bane still makes up for it by showing he's a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, he's alone.
Touch him, then I will kill you.
As for Batman, he has been left with depression after losing his childhood friend in the previous movie, and has been out of action for 8 years. He's even stuck with a cane after the injury he sustained in the last movie during his encounter with Two-Face. His mother's pearls are robbed by Selina Kyle, this time played by Anne Hathaway. Selina disguised herself as a maid, and used the pearls to get Bruce Wayne's fingerprints, which she intended to sell to get a clean slate program, which did not work out so well for her. Jim Gordon pursues her attackers into the sewers, where he and his fellow officers are ambushed and dragged to Bane's area of operations. Much to Bane's disappointment in his men for dragging the police commissioner to their hideout. Jim Gordon manages to make his escape, and Bane instructs the henchmen that screwed up to follow Gordon in the most logical way possible. Jim Gordon is rescued by a rookie police officer named John Blake, who seeks the assistance of Bruce Wayne and is well aware of his alter ego. Bruce questions Blake on why he didn't ask his superiors for help, with Blake responding that they asked if he saw any giant alligators. Nice nod to Killer Croc. Bruce then gets some new toys from Morgan Freeman, straps up his leg, and just like that, he's back in action. He pursues Bane and his henchmen after they hit the stock exchange and steal all of his money using his fingerprints stolen by Catwoman. Speaking of whom, Catwoman goes after John Daggett for not holding up his end of their deal, claiming that he was bullshitting about the clean slate program. And Catwoman learns the hard way that Daggett is associated with Bane and his mercenary gang. But luckily, she gets help from Batman, who is fresh off of having the entire GZPD chasing after him. Batman and Catwoman get away using Batman's new aircraft, simply called the Bat. The next morning, Alfred resigns from being Bruce's butler, which I have mixed thoughts on. On one hand, it feels completely out of character for Alfred, since he's been Bruce's father figure since his parents were killed. And he has supported him all the way from when he started his crime-fighting career, to when the Joker killed Rachel and Bruce was feeling doubt about his intentions to inspire good, and only bringing more pain and misery to Gotham. Alfred encouraged Bruce that Gotham still needed Batman, and in Batman Begins, he says this twice.
You still haven't given up on me.
Never.
But here, he gives up on Bruce, believing he doesn't have what it takes to be Batman anymore. On the other hand though, I suppose Alfred isn't entirely wrong when he says that Bruce isn't the man he used to be, and he's been washed for 8 years. But it still feels wrong that Alfred would decide to give up on Bruce after he assured him in the first movie that he would never give up on him. And after Bruce lost Rachel and failed to save Harvey in one piece, Alfred encouraged Bruce that Gotham would have to make do with Batman. And he even admits that he burned Rachel's last letter to Bruce, in which she admitted that she chose Harvey Dent over him. And Bruce is rightfully pissed at Alfred, even if he intended to spare him pain. Hiding a truth like that just leads to more pain in the long run. Bruce dismisses his now estranged butler, and we never see him again for the majority of the movie's remaining runtime. I can somewhat understand how Alfred is worried for Bruce's life as he is now washed, but now that Gotham needs Batman for the first time in 8 years, it feels wrong for Alfred to leave his son after he has supported him all the way in the last 2 movies, and especially supporting him at his lowest point in the last movie. I feel like this moment needed more scenes beforehand to build up to it, so that Alfred leaving would feel more warranted. Lucius pays a visit and informs Bruce that Bane's crew used his money to go on a gambling spree, leaving him broke. And this leaves Wayne Enterprises board with the decision to give Bruce the boot, as he has also spent an excessive amount of money on an energy reactor that he left dormant for years out of fear that it would be used as a nuke. Bruce decides to entrust a woman named Miranda Tate to look after the energy reactor and take control of Wayne Enterprises. She agrees, and they bang. That's one way to use a huge amount of energy. Batman meets up with Catwoman, with the former offering the latter the clean slate that she seeks, in exchange for the location of Bane's hideout. Though Catwoman is known for weighing her options and not liking to lose, especially her life. So she double crosses Batman, leaving him to fight Bane alone. Now, as we have seen earlier in the movie, Bane is indeed a capable and formidable fighter. Batman, however, is washed, and he gets his ass whooped by Bane. And this scene is where the fight choreography is at its absolute worst. Throughout this trilogy, Batman has never really been the most impressive fighter to watch. I mean, he is at least a capable fighter, but none of his fight scenes really scream peak human physique, or show off the high levels of disciplined training that Batman is usually known for. And it doesn't help that by The Dark Knight Rises, he is completely and utterly washed. And I joke you not, this was literally Bruce's mindset before going to fight Bane.
What about when you come up against him? What then?
I'll fight harder, I always have. Ra's al Ghul was the League of Shadows and I beat him. Bane is just a mercenary, and we need to find out what he's up to.
Oh yeah, Bane in this movie was trained by the same group that trained Bruce, and is shown to be much stronger and disciplined than Bruce. So no shit that this washed up old man who really doesn't care about dying loses so easily to Bane. The reason Bane beating Batman in the Nightfall storyline works so much better is because Batman in that comic series is still on active duty and keeps up his disciplined training schedule. And when Bane releases all of the inmates from Arkham Asylum, Batman has to fight them one after the other. So by the time Bane comes knocking on his door, Batman is severely physically and mentally fatigued. And in Arkham Origins or the Telltale series, while Bane proves to be a challenge for the Dark Knight, Batman still manages to hold his own against Bane and get a few good hits on him. Here, however, he just loses to Bane so pathetically easily. His punches don't really seem to do much damage to him. And it's no wonder, since in this movie, this is only the second time he's put the suit back on since coming out of retirement. This is one of the areas where I feel like The Dark Knight Rises could have benefited from being a two-part movie. Because Bane being one of Batman's strongest foes is really a story I feel that can't really be done justice over just one movie. Maybe if we had a few more scenes where Batman is building himself back up and getting back into the swing of crime fighting, this fight scene might have played out much better, since the audience could probably believe that Batman would have more of a chance against Bane. But no, he runs in like a hothead thinking that Bane is just a chump and that he can fight like he did in his prime. Bane easily disposes of this washed old bat, and does what Bane does best. Bane then drags Bruce to a prison called the Pit, where men are thrown to suffer and die. Bane spent most of his life in this prison, and he intends to make Bruce suffer by forcing him to rot in this pit as he takes over Gotham City and brings it to its knees. Bane and his crew destroy every bridge out of Gotham and lure the entire GCPD to be entrapped underground. Seriously, the GCPD really need to stop sending in everyone they have just to catch one person. Because shit like this happens, and Gotham is left with no cops to uphold the peace. I mean, not like the GCPD are the most noble police force anyway. Bane gets hold of the fusion reactor from Wayne Enterprises and modifies it into a nuclear bomb. He then heads to a stadium, blows it up, and announces his plans for Gotham.
I come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch-ass motherfucker. He pissed on my fucking wife. That's right. He took his hedgehog fucking quilly dick out and he pissed on my fucking wife and he said his dick was this big. And I said that's disgusting. So I'm making a call-out post on my twitter.com. Shadow the Hedgehog, you got a small dick. It's the size of this walnut except way smaller. And guess what? Here's what my dong looks like.
Bane wastes no time in asserting his army's occupation over Gotham. They also raid the entire R&D department, taking all the tumblers. You see what I meant when I said leaving all this expensive, dangerous tech lying around would come back to bite Wayne Enterprises in the ass big time? And he reads out Jim Gordon's confession of Batman's innocence and that Harvey Dent went insane. And Gotham goes into absolute chaos. But not necessarily because of the lie they were fed for 8 years, but because Bane proceeds to break every inmate out of Blackgate Prison, many who were locked up as a result of Dent. So in a way, the Joker kind of won, but we don't really get to see the citizens' reaction to Harvey's crimes, or them showing distaste towards Gordon for lying to them for 8 years. But due to the circumstances, Christopher Nolan made the right choice to leave the Joker out of the story in respect for Heath Ledger. But yeah, in a way, Bane pretty much accomplished Joker's goal. To drive Gotham City into chaos and show the world that the city is full of chaos, scum, and lies. Meanwhile, Bruce, still suffering from a broken back, tries to get on his feet, and one of the inmates assists him by tying a rope to his back to help it snap back into place. Bruce is suddenly visited by the Force ghost of Ra's al Ghul. Huh, I guess he really was Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn from Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, directed by George Lucas after all. Ra's taunts Bruce for failing his mission to protect Gotham, and only managed to achieve a victory built upon a lie. As Bane's grip on Gotham tightens and time runs out, Bruce gets angrier and more determined to escape from the pit. He tries twice but fails both times due to the safety rope being too heavy for him to make the final jump. After his failed second attempt, he has a pep talk from the prison doctor, and Bruce accepts his fear of dying while helplessly watching as his city tears itself apart. Bruce then tries to climb one more time, but this time without the rope to save him from falling. And this is genuinely one of the most uplifting scenes in superhero movie history. Bruce finally accepts the fear of death, and uses it to motivate himself to make the climb, as the inmates chant, "Rise." As he reaches the big jump once again, he's thrashed by bats, just like he was when he was a kid when he fell into the well outside Wayne Manor. But this time, his father isn't there to help him up. He has to make the climb all on his own. As Hans Zimmer's amazing score kicks in, the inmates chant louder and faster, and Bruce takes a deep breath before making the leap of faith one more time. And this time, he makes the jump. The inmates cheer in celebration as Bruce climbs his way out of the pit to freedom. This scene gives me goosebumps every time, and it's one of the reasons why I love Batman. Despite that he is a regular human being, he is capable of overcoming seemingly impossible situations. And this scene is a good reminder that even when we fall, we can still find the strength to pick ourselves back up. And Hans Zimmer's score gives this moment the uplifting vibe it deserves, as Bruce climbs his way to freedom. The Dark Knight has risen. Bruce wastes no time in returning to Gotham, which is even more chaotic than the last time he saw it on TV back in his cell in the pit. Scarecrow is now serving as the city's judge, which is honestly kind of funny when you think that all the way back, Cillian Murphy could have been casted as Batman. And seeing where he ends up in the third movie is just so funny to me. And there is no due process or lawyers, and the nuts of Gotham just decide on whoever the fuck they want to be guilty. and Crane offers them death or exile. The next group of people on their chopping block is Jim and his group of resistance fighters. I suppose this is the movie's way of showing the repercussions of Jim lying about Harvey Dent, but I feel like there could have been more scenes on that. I feel like the citizens' reaction to Bane revealing the true nature of Harvey Dent kinda gets lost in the chaos he unleashes on the city by freeing all the criminals. Gordon and his men are given exile where they have to walk on the ice until they fall in and freeze. Luckily, Batman shows up, takes the goons out, and gives Gordon a jammer to the bomb. And they ignite a giant flaming bat symbol as a warning to Bane. Batman then heads to assist John Blake, who takes down Kratos, and together they free the GCPD officers from the underground tunnels. Batman then instructs John Blake and Catwoman to create escape routes out of the city in case they fail. And with that, the war begins. And the two foes find each other in the crowd of chaos, and...
So you came back to die with your city?
Seriously? It's like Batman had an epic comeback line prepared and then forgot it at the last second. Here's a better comeback line he could have said.
So you came back to die with your shitty?
No, I came back to show you what happens when you mess with my city.
And the fight choreography... it's still not the greatest. Batman does manage to get a few hits in this time, but he still moves pretty slow, and Bane punches much faster than him. Bane's fight choreography in this movie is pretty much what this Batman should have been, because Bane's fight scenes make it more believable that he's a highly trained warrior, while Batman's fight scenes make it look like he just punches as hard as any average human can. However, Batman still manages to get the upper hand by breaking Bane's mask. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Bane sustained injuries in the pit, and because of that he needs a mask to breathe and ease the pain, so it serves a different purpose than in the comics. And Batman takes advantage of this weakness and breaks the tubes, which breaks Bane's focus and gives Batman the edge. Batman then demands Bane to give him the trigger to the bomb, and what the heck, is that the chick he slept with? Believe it or not, this movie has a twist villain. Yep, DC did it before Disney. And like Disney, they made a terrible twist villain. Turns out her real name is Talia al Ghul, daughter of Ra's al Ghul. And why is she a terrible twist villain? Well, like most Disney twist villains, she shows absolutely no signs of her true intentions or nature at any point during the movie until her big reveal. And you want to know what makes her even worse? She claims that she hated her father for excommunicating Bane, and that she could not forgive him until Batman murdered him. I am not joking. She explicitly says that she decided to disregard her hatred towards her father for rejecting her friend, and that they were going to carry out his plan to destroy Gotham. All because Batman killed him. I'm sorry, what? This revelation just makes Bane's motivation make no sense at all. Why would he, let alone Talia, want to follow the ideology of a man who saw him as nothing more than a monster? And back to Talia, her reasoning makes even less sense. Again, all it took for her to change her mind about her father and adopt his ideology was him being killed by Batman. If you want to show the consequences of Batman killing, this is not the way to do it! This is such dumb writing, and Talia is worse than any Disney twist villain I have ever seen. Yeah, I said it, she is worse than Hans, Bellwether, and that was his mistake! Because as much problems as Big Hero 6 has, I can at least understand where Callahan is coming from. And Hans and Bellwether may not be good twist villains, especially Hans, but even their motivations don't even come close to being as incomprehensible as Talia's from The Dark Knight Rises. And it is pretty fitting that this terrible excuse of a twist villain gets a terribly done death.
Prepare yourselves. My father's work is done.
Oh, and Bane gets disposed of quickly by Catwoman, who tells Batman that she is not big on Batman's no-gun rule. Which is ironic considering 5 minutes later he uses the guns on the bat to dispose of Miss Terrible twist villain Al Ghul. Come Come to think of it, it's pretty hypocritical that Batman refuses to use guns, yet he's okay with strapping guns onto his bat vehicles. Batman decides to use the bat to fly the bomb out of the city, and he and Catwoman share a kiss before Batman gets ready to dispose of the bomb. Gordon realizes that this may be his last chance to get a goodbye from his partner, so he tells Batman that Gotham should know the name of the man who saved them. And Batman just replies that a hero could be anyone, even someone putting a coat around a young boy's shoulders and assuring him that the world hasn't ended. And as the bat flies off, Gordon puts 2 and 2 together that Batman is the same young boy he comforted after his parents were gunned down. Gordon was there with Bruce for his entire journey, from the beginning to the end. And this is what makes probably the best we have seen of Batman and Gordon's friendship on the big screen. Batman flies the bomb outside the city's limits just in time before it detonates, saving Gotham one last time. Gotham celebrates in relief as the GCPD rounds up all of Bane's men and the rest of the criminals. Gotham City begins to rebuild, but this time not off a lie, but off hope. A statue is built in their true hero's honor, and Bruce Wayne, who survived the blast because of course he did, finally happily retires and begins a relationship with Selina, satisfying Alfred to see that his son has finally found happiness. And Bruce passes the mantle of the Batman onto John Blake as the Batcave platform rises for a new Dark Knight. So all in all, The Dark Knight Rises is a very mixed bag. There's a lot to like and a lot that is not so good. The movie's plot is a big mess, and Miss Terrible Twist Villain Al Ghul really brought the third act down a lot. The fight scenes are the worst in the trilogy, and Alfred fucking off at the beginning of the movie was just a huge dick move for his character. And Batman thinking he could take on Bane even in his washed state made for a kinda pathetic fight scene. Again, I feel like this movie could have benefited from being a two-parter. Because with all this movie had going on in it, and with Bane being probably the biggest threat Batman has faced yet, the movie probably could have turned out a lot better if it had 2 parts to work with. The first part could have hypothetically focused on Batman building himself back up. That probably would have made the fight between him and Bane play out a lot better. Or at the very least, increases the audience's faith that Batman can win the fight if he's not in a washed state. And hypothetically, the second part could have been focused on him climbing out of the pit and rediscovering what made him Batman in the first place, ultimately paying off him taking back the city. However, that's not to say that the movie we got in the end is all bad. Tom Hardy really gave a solid performance as Bane, and he is a very good antagonist throughout the movie. You know, if you choose to forget the reveal of Miss Terrible Twist Villain Al Ghul. And Bruce's climb out of the pit is one of the best scenes in all of superhero movies, if not just movies in general. And Hans Zimmer really sold the epicness of the scene with his uplifting score. And even with all of its issues, The Dark Knight Rises is at least a satisfying close to Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. It manages to wrap up most of the trilogy's loose ends, not in a perfectly wrapped bow, but more of a crumply wrapped Christmas present kind of way. Despite the movie's messy plot, it's still a good watch, and it's nice to see that Bruce gets his happy ending. With all that said, I give The Dark Knight Rises a C rank. It's far from unwatchable, and it still has a lot good going for it, but it also has a lot of problems that hold it back from being a masterpiece. And with all 3 movies in the Dark Knight trilogy covered, it's time to see how Christian Bale's Batman fares. Christian Bale is an actor known for going through extreme lengths for his roles. Probably too extreme. When Christian Bale was casted as Batman, he was extremely skinny from his role as the Machinist. So people were understandably shocked when they saw the alarming state of his body, and had doubts that he could pull off Batman. However, Christopher Nolan told Bale to get as big as he possibly could. And Bale kinda took him too literally on that, and spent the next few months after finishing The Machinist, lifting weights and binging on pizza and ice cream. He would then have to lose some of the excessive weight that he put on to obtain Batman's muscular physique. When it comes to Bale's Bruce Wayne, he's very good. Especially when he acts like a total asshole in public to deceive people from thinking he's Batman. Speaking of which, his Batman for the most part is pretty good. Though there is a reason the internet has made fun of his voice for years at this point. With Batman Begins, his voice actually wasn't too bad. It did the job at scaring criminals, and he toned it down when talking to his allies.
The antidote. One for Gordon to inoculate himself, the other for mass production.
Where were the other drugs going?
I never knew. I don't know. I swear to God.
Swear to me!
But in the next two movies, Bale kinda just went too far with the monster voice for Batman. I don't know if this was just him deciding to change his voice, or was it Nolan directing him to sound more like a monster? Or was this just him finding it harder to do the Batman voice with each movie? Because Bale mentioned in an interview that like many other actors, he was very uncomfortable in the Batsuit, and he wondered how someone walks around and talks to people like this. So he decided to go with the growly voice, which he went harder with each movie. I can understand where he's coming from, because as cool as the Batsuit looks, it does not look like the most comfortable thing to wear. But there are points where it is hard to understand what he's saying.
You never give it to an ordinary citizen!
Speaking of the Batsuit, I can see why most would prefer the Batman Begins suit, since it has a much simpler and scarier design that sells Batman looking like a demon. Though it may come as a surprise, I actually prefer the Dark Knight suit. Yeah, it sacrifices the scarier look for a more techie, detailed looking suit, but honestly, I just have a soft spot for this suit. I just really like the look of it, especially how the Bat logo matches the logo shown in the trilogy's promotional material, as opposed to the Batman Begins suit using the classic Batman logo. I may see why many prefer the Batman Begins suit, but watching these movies as a young lad, my mind was always attracted to seeing the slimmer, more advanced looking suit introduced in The Dark Knight. When it comes to Batman's other equipment in these movies, he's got the Batarang shurikens, the sticky bomb gun, an EMP gun, spiky explosives, and the grappling gun. And I like how you can see some of the gadgets poking out of the belt. It further helps sell the grounded and realistic setting that these Batman movies take place in, and Batman doesn't go pulling out wacky ass gadgets like a Looney Tunes character. I like the detail of the gauntlets on the Batman Begins suit being reused from his ninja outfit, and how the ones on the Dark Knight suit are able to shoot the blades at a foe as a defense mechanism.
Perhaps you should read the instructions first.
Compared to older Batman movies, the cape transforms into a glider more naturally, and doesn't flow around erratically, which is probably the closest we get to see Batman gliding through the skies like in the Arkham games. Bale's Batman vehicles are obviously more military inspired, with the Batmobile being a tank built to crush anything in its path. And I like the little bat pod it spits out when it becomes heavily damaged in The Dark Knight. It's like even after being destroyed in battle, the Batmobile lives to fight one last battle in The Dark Knight Rises. And it looks badass and funny when the tires swivel around. And then there's the Bat! Lucius explains that the vehicle has a long, uninteresting Wayne Enterprises name, so he just dubbed it the Bat! Though the Batwing traditionally is more shaped like a bat, so why not call that the Bat? The vehicle designs in the Nolanverse definitely cater more to Nolan's grounded crime drama setting, rather than the vehicles that Batman would typically pilot. And it's funny to think that Wayne Enterprises just has a bunch of these expensive, unused military vehicles just lying around. Boy, did that come back to bite them in the ass in the third movie. When it comes to Batman's detective and fighting skills, I mean, he is capable, but they don't really scream physical or mental human peak. I already brought up the fight scenes throughout these three movies, and to sum up the main issue I have with them, it's just that this Batman isn't really fast with his moves or punches. He just looks like an average guy in a batsuit punching as hard as an average human. He is at least a mostly capable fighter, but he doesn't really look like he was trained by ninjas with how slow he moves. Again, I've seen worse choreographed fight scenes, but I've also seen better, and believe that Batman being a highly trained and disciplined fighter should be a fast and hard hitter, which is not quite shown in the Dark Knight trilogy. As for the detective stuff, it's there but not much. Like with my main issue with the fight scenes missing the mark at showing Batman as someone who is at physical human peak, the small amount of detective stuff that is present in the trilogy isn't really enough to convince me that this guy is the world's greatest detective. I mean, the bullet case he cracks in The Dark Knight is pretty impressive. But the problem is, Batman doesn't really do much when it comes to detective stuff throughout these movies. Again, I'm not trying to say he's an incompetent detective, but he doesn't really do enough to show us that he's the world's greatest detective. And of course, there is the most important criteria when it comes to writing a good Batman, and we all know the result of this one. Thankfully, Bale's Batman kills more sparingly compared to Keaton's Batman. I mean, he does leave Ra's al Ghul to die, but the other kills, even if this is Batman and we all don't like when Batman breaks his one rule, I suppose these situations are more understandable. With the League of Ninjas and Faker Ra's, they threatened to destroy Gotham, so Bruce retaliated to get out of there. Two-Face was about to kill Gordon's son, and with Miss Terrible Twist villain Al Ghul and her truck driver, Gotham was 5 minutes away from being turned into a crater, so Batman did what he had to do with the clock imminently ticking. Just to be clear, I still prefer when Batman doesn't kill, since it's what makes him an endearing character. But at the very least, Bale's Batman does not put up Patrick Bateman numbers in terms of kills. The no-kill rule is established in Batman Begins, and throughout the trilogy, Batman only seems to kill as a last resort. I still don't like it, but I'll take it over the no-kill rule being ignored completely. So just like this trilogy as a whole, Christian Bale's Batman has a lot of good and bad. Honestly, I would say he peaked in Batman Begins, and then kinda went off the rails with the monster voice in the later movies. Though with all that being said, I would say that Christian Bale is overall a good Batman. I will give his Batman a B. I think Bale has enough good to outweigh the bad. So that wraps up part 3 of the Batman movie retrospective. And I guess you can also call this my Dark Knight trilogy retrospective. These 3 movies had plenty of good, and some not so good things holding them back from being perfect. And at the end of the day, I still enjoy Nolan's version of Batman a lot. I may have a lot of issues with the Dark Knight trilogy nowadays, especially after consuming other Batman media over the years, but this trilogy was my true introduction to Batman, after playing the LEGO games. And I still have a soft spot for the Dark Knight trilogy, as I believe the good it does outweighs the bad. So that's it for part 3. Tune in next time where I will be finally finishing this retrospective with the LEGO Batman movie and the Batman. And let me tell you, I am so pumped to talk about those 2 movies. What do you want? What? What do you mean there's another Batman movie that was released in theaters? What year? 2016? No, I'm not doing Batman v Superman. I'm only doing the solo Batman movie. What? What do you mean there was another Batman movie released in theaters that year? Oh no. Oh no!